Hello students. Today we will discuss about different types of E. coli vectors. So far what we have discussed is that using E. coli as a host, we have designed vectors like plasmid vectors. We discussed that in detail. We discussed about the phage vectors and we also discussed about the cosmid vectors. In case of phage vectors or cosmid vectors, we have studied the regulatory aspect of lytic cycle, lysogeny cycle. The most important one is going to be the in vitro DNA packaging. During this in vitro DNA packaging, we also understood the importance of cos site, so we could design cosmid vectors. So in all these vectors, the main function is to introduce a DNA of our choice, then we can make multiple copies. During this multiple copies, the most important DNA regulatory element is the origin of replication. So in case of a plasmid, we can introduce a DNA like a PCR. We can amplify that particular inserted DNA into number of copies. And in case of phage vectors and cosmid vectors, these are principally used to create either the cDNA library or genomic library, basically because you can take the chromosome, digest it with restriction endonuclease to generate larger DNA fragments. All those fragments are cloned into either the phage vectors or the cosmid vectors so that it will be amplified. And then using those amplified DNA signals, so we are going to identify the gene. So this is the major function or of vectors in E. coli based what we have studied. Now the next level is that instead of inserting a DNA of our choice, can we introduce a whole gene, either a complementary DNA? Now using that particular DNA, so instead of just multiplying the copies, can we have the transcription in which we can try to understand the mRNA level? Another one is going to be the translation. So what we call this as the inserted gene should undergo the expression. So it should synthesize mRNA. From that it has to synthesize a protein. So now for gene expression, a mere origin of replication doesn't really help. So what happens then? We do require other regulatory elements involved in the expression of a gene. So we have to add up some additional DNA segments into these E. coli vectors. Those additional DNA sequences which promotes expressions are included in expression vectors, or the vectors which has got the regulatory elements of protein expressions. So now such vectors we call them as the expression vectors. In case of an expression vectors, the most important one is going to be the promoter region. So if you do take about the gene, then from the translation product on the upstream, we have the regulatory elements where the polymerase enzyme will bind, then there is a promoter, then we do have a regulatory region called the operators. These two things are very important for the transcriptional activities. Once the RNA, that is the messenger RNA, is synthesized, then requires the ribosomal binding site, in fact a region, so that the ribosome will bind and initiates translation. So apart from the origin of replication, in case of an expression vectors, promoters with the regulatory elements and the ribosomal binding sites are very, very important. So any vector which has all these elements required for the expression, we call them as an expression vectors. So we are going to discuss about these expression vectors in the coming videos. Apart from that, we also have another vector, what we call this as a shuttle vectors. What exactly mean by a shuttle vectors? So far what we have studied, all the initial experiments, the laboratory experiments, we can do mutation, we can do all kind of studies can be easily done using E. coli as the host. But we cannot use E. coli in the industrial section. So we standardized a laboratory condition. But if I want to take that into an industrial level, either in the form of a fermenter, E. coli is not the right host in fact. So, for example, in order to study apart from the gene expression, so recombinant DNA technology also has other applications. For example, many microorganisms are used for the degradation of aromatic compounds, especially from the industrial toxic waste. So now if you want to do these things, E. coli is not the right host, in fact. So because there are plenty of other microorganisms, many of them are all gram-positive microorganisms. So in that particular gram-positive microorganisms, many times the plasmid which is designed for E. coli might not express in the gram-positive bacteria. For example, degradation of aromatic compounds, plant pathogenicity. If I want to use in industrial fermenters, I have given few examples. Bacillus are the choice of microorganism for the industrial production of enzymes like proteases, amylases and proteases. Suppose if you are into the industrial production of antibiotics, actinomycetes are the preferred microorganism. So for the production of amino acids and the derivatization of various forms of steroids, then it is the coriniforms of microorganisms are very important. So in this particular case, what happens is that we have to use a vector which will work in E. coli and also should work in the other microorganisms. The shuttle vectors, in some textbook you also find a chapter stating that vectors other than E. coli. That means, so we also need to have the vectors to work with other microorganisms which are very useful in the industrial fermenters, in fact. So in that case, what happens? So we need to have regulatory elements which will work in E. coli, and we also have an additional regulatory elements which are going to be expressed in the other microorganisms. So that means this particular vector will shuttle between E. coli and gram-positive microorganism, or it is from using two different hosts. Need not be E. coli and gram-positive bacteria. It can be E. coli from yeast, E. coli from so many other host systems. That one we call this as a shuttle vectors. So it is get a little bit complicated, but you do understand what is an expression vectors. You need all these regulatory elements for the gene expression. Shuttle vectors, it should require two different hosts, E. coli for the initial laboratory conditions and the other microorganisms which are preferred in the industrial fermentations or the other choice. So the vector should work both in E. coli and these microorganisms. We call them as shuttle vectors. I only have given phage meets basically because phage meets is just a definition. Sometimes you might ask these phage meets, what are phage meets, for a couple of marks in your examination. Phage meets are nothing but plasmid DNA consisting of phage DNA sequences. For example, cosmid, because we know that because the cos sites are introduced in a plasmid vector, in fact. Now cosmid can be a good example for phage meets basically because it has got the plasmid DNA as well as phage DNA. A combination of phage DNA and plasmid DNA, we call this as a phage meet. This is just for the simple definition, but we are going to discuss in detail about what are expression vectors and what are shuttle vectors. So in case of an expression vectors, promoters and ribosomal binding sites are very important. So now how these promoters choice has been selected and whether do we have any hybrid promoters so that it can suit for the expression of various genes, or the discussion of our next slide. All right. Now in this one, I have just given the title vector development. So now the question is that the vector development starting from DNA replication to transcription and the protein expression, in fact. So here I will just remind you that what all the things we have already studied. We know that PBR322 is the most versatile vector, and using this PBR322, somatostatin, the synthetic gene of somatostatin hormone, has been introduced into the PBR322, and its hormone has been expressed successfully in an E. coli. So now here the regulatory aspects what we have discussed are little bit different, in fact. So I will quickly go through that, in fact, how the expression system in PBR322 is different from the developed expression vectors in fact. So in case of a PBR322, we have the origin of replication, that is very much clear, but we have ampicillin resistant gene, and then we also have a tetracycline resistant gene. So now I will just discuss about how resistance is going to be offered in the ampicillin resistant gene and tetracycline resistant gene, and also the other antibiotic resistance what we have used. So normally what happens, ampicillin is an antibiotic. It interferes in the cell wall synthesis of E. coli. So thereby it kills the microorganism. But in case of a resistance, what happens this? So it harbors a gene which produces an enzyme lactamase. Okay, now this is an enzyme. So that means this particular ampicillin resistant gene has to transcribe and translate it into a lactamase gene. That means this particular ampicillin resistant gene should have its own promoter, its own operator, and also ribosomal binding site. So here, all right. So as a result, now all of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, when we talk about the antibiotic resistant gene, all of them will code for a protein. In case of an ampicillin, it interferes in the cell wall synthesis. It produces an enzyme lactamase. This will be released into the periplasmic space of the E. coli. Then this lactamase, what it does is that it hydrolyzes the beta-lactam ring so that it is no more functional. Another one is going to be the tetracycline, chloramphenicol, kanamycin. All of them will bind to the different subunit of ribosome and interferes in the protein translation. Whereas in case of a tetracycline resistant gene, it again produces a transmembrane protein. Now this transmembrane protein is going to be incorporated into the host membrane. So now this will not allow tetracycline to enter into the cell so that it will not interfere in the ribosome binding in fact. So now this is, so again it has to produce a protein. Whereas in case of a chloramphenicol resistant gene, it produces an enzyme. Now this enzyme together with acetyl coenzyme A. So now this will derivatize chloramphenicol into hydroxy-acetoxy derivative of chloramphenicol. Because of the hydroxy-acetoxy derivatization, chloramphenicol no more binds to ribosome. Whereas in case of a kanamycin, which is an aminoglycoside, so now this resistance is because of the phosphotransferase enzyme, which will add up a phosphate group to this aminoglycoside so that it will not bind to the ribosome. In all those resistant gene, it has to produce a protein part of it. That means all of them should have a promoter, an operator, and a ribosomal binding site. But the difference between this vector and these vectors is that because these promoters are not in our control, the moment the plasmid enters into the system, the gene is going to be activated in fact. Now, so as a result, in case of PBR322, so the somatostatin gene has been introduced into one of the antibiotic resistant gene, and we have used the promoter of one of these particular antibiotic resistant gene for its expression. All right. So that it is not going to be in our control. Then you also aware of the insertion of a LAG-Z DNA. Now the LAG-Z DNA, suppose if I do introduce a particular gene under the regulation of LAG-Z DNA, now this will not going to be expressed immediately because LAG-Z DNA, the expression is dependent on the concentration of the substrate in fact. So what happens, beta-galactosidase enzyme hydrolyzes galactose. So that means when there is an elevated concentration of galactose, then only beta-galactosidase enzyme is going to be produced, unlike these genes. So here immediately it enters into the system, these proteins are going to be synthesized, whereas the advantage of a LAG-Z DNA is that whenever we want, we can induce the gene expression. So we all know that in case of a beta-galactosidase, IPTG, an analog of galactose, is an inducer. So in the presence of IPTG, beta-galactosidase enzyme is going to be activated or it is going to be overexpressed. Then with the help of the substrate XGAL, which is a colorless, the product is going to be blue in color. So we are going to identify the whole process. So in case of an expression vector, if we do introduce our gene under the control of LAG-Z DNA, we can express whenever we want. It is not going to be expressed automatically. That means the promoter of LAG-Z DNA is under the influence of the inducer. Then we also discussed about the C1 repressor gene in case of a lytic and a lysogenic cycle. So now they have also identified a temperature sensitive mutation in the C1 repressor gene, because C1 repressor gene, you know that it will bind to the promoter left and promoter right. So now so binding to these two promoters will block the further transcriptional activity. So now they have identified a mutation in the repressor gene. So that mutation is temperature sensitive, meaning that it will efficiently bind to the promoter L and promoter R at low temperature, I would say around 31 degrees centigrade. But the moment you increase the temperature to 45 degrees centigrade, now the C1 repressor gene is no more functional. Then transcription and translation can be initiated. So now this C1 repressor gene will provide an additional advantage over LAG-Z DNA as well as these promoters, because in case of a LAG-Z DNA we have to add an inducer. In case of C1 repressor gene, we don't have to add anything, all we have to do the change in the incubation temperature. So the promoter usage is very important. So an expression vector having a very controlled promoters are the right expression vector. So this is the most important thing which I wanted to convey with respect to the expression vector, in fact. So now I will quickly go through the development of various forms of expression vector. So now this is a plasmid UC, PUC vectors. This UC will stand for the University of California. This has been developed there. So now compared to PBR 322, this is an improvised expression vector. So now here what happens is that we have PUC 7/8, 12/13 and 18/19. So all of them has got the plasmid DNA. Then it has got the ampicillin resistant gene required for the identification of the clone, a very good origin of replication. So compared to PBR 322, so in most of the other vectors we also have a polyclonal site. I also discussed this during the class hours. So polyclonal site is a strategically placed DNA sequences which has got the restriction site for various restriction enzymes. All right. So now we have the polyclonal site. So now 7-8 series, 12-13 series and 18-19 series, they mean that they do contain, for example, 7-8 series will have few restriction enzymes, say around like 7 to 8 restriction enzymes. Whereas 12 to 13, the options of restriction enzymes has been increased to further. And 18-19, then you added some more restriction site in that one, so that the experimental persons do have a wide variety of choice for the cloning purposes, in fact. So now we have this polyclonal site and 7-8 series, 12-13 and 18-19 series, they all represents different site for restriction enzymes. And 7 and 8, again I told you, because this is a DNA sequence present either in positive orientation or a negative orientation. So we always find 7-8 series, you have the same restriction enzymes, but one is oriented positive, another one is negative. 12-13 is again we'll have some additional sequences, and again we have the positive orientation and a negative orientation, and here also same. So all of them, apart from this polyclonal site, they do contain the LAG-Z DNA. And the LAG-Z DNA principally will have a promoter and then the beta galactosidase gene, in fact. So now we always get confused stating that how this LAG-Z DNA is going to be functioned, because we know that this LAG operon is characterized from the E. coli itself. That means E. coli genome also has got a LAG-Z DNA. So now this particular DNA can also be discussed as what is known as an alpha complementation. Now the function of LAG-Z DNA can also be asked, right? What is alpha complementation? That means alpha complementation is related to the activity of LAG-Z DNA. Now what exactly this alpha complementation means? Basically because the genomic DNA of E. coli also has got the LAG-Z DNA or the LAC operon and the complete series of enzymes related to that one. So now the host which we are going to use should have a mutation in that LAG-Z DNA. Where exactly the mutation is required? Now I will explain with respect to the alpha complementation, because we know that LAG-Z DNA code for the enzyme beta galactosidase enzyme. Beta galactosidase enzyme is a tetramer consisting of 4 subunits, and all of them are all identical. It is a homo tetramer. Each monomer has got of LAG-Z DNA has got an alpha side and an omega side. So if alpha side is not present, or if it is mutated, then the beta galactosidase enzyme is not functional. So what we do, that we take a host cell in which the alpha side of a monomer is mutated. So as a result, the host LAG-Z DNA is not functional. This will be functional only if this alpha region side of the monomer is supplemented. So now what happens, this alpha side will complement the host beta galactosidase. So we are going to have just the alpha side of the beta galactosidase monomer in this particular case, in fact. So now we have this promoter, then we have this alpha region which is required for the activity of beta galactosidase, in fact. Now suppose if we are going to introduce the gene of our choice under this particular promoter, then what happens, this LAG-Z, that is the alpha side of the monomer, is no more functional. Since it is no more functional, what happens? So usually we used to get blue colonies with this plasmid. Since we have disrupted the activity or the synthesis of this alpha side of the monomer, so then the beta galactosidase enzyme is no more functional. So instead of a blue colony, we are going to get a white colony. So the white colony will tell us that, okay, now we have a clone. But now this particular clone is under the regulation of LAC operon. So that means, so now the whatever the gene we have introduced is not going to be expressed immediately for mRNA and the protein. So we can make them to activate by introducing IPTG. So that is the advantage of that one. So in all case, whereas PUC 7-8 series, 12-13 series, 18-19 series, we have the plasmid vector, we have the polyclonal site in order to make it a very good expression vector. So we have used a promoter which is under our control, that is the LAG-Z DNA. So now this is the initial expression vector. Now in this one they have also introduced another PUC 118/119. So in that they do have an additional origin of replication from the M13. So M13 is a filamentous bacteriophage. So now because of the filamentous nature of it, it only synthesizes single copy of the DNA. Suppose if you introduce a double helical DNA, so suppose if we are going to multiply the whole DNA under the origin of replication of M13, so say under this origin we are going to synthesize the double-stranded DNA. Under this, so the double-stranded DNA will synthesize only the single-stranded one. And why we need this single-stranded DNA? Principally because during the Human Genome Project, we only have to have one strand to sequence the other part of it, in fact. So in order to produce single-stranded DNA in large quantities so that can be used for the DNA sequencing, so they have constructed this M13 origin of replication into. So that is the only difference. PUC vectors, this is with LAG-Z DNA, and now this is with M13. So in order to get the single stranded one, I think now you have understood the function of a laxity DNA and what exactly is a alpha complementation in fact. All right. Now the other promoters which are extensively used in the expression vectors are all the promoters from the phage, bacteriophage. T3, now this is T7, another one is sp6. And what is the significance of T3, T7 and sp6 means? So because these promoters are highly specific to a particular polymerase. So now the T3 will function only the DNA dependent T3 RNA polymerase, whereas T7 is again DNA dependent T7 RNA polymerase. sp6 is again DNA dependent sp6 RNA polymerase. So sp6 RNA polymerase will not function with this or not this, or T3 RNA polymerase will not function, all those things. So as a result, so if you are going to have these promoters, we are strategically placed. So now we can make sure that we can activate this promoter, or we can activate this promoter, or we can activate this promoter. So that is the advantage. So the most preferred one is going to be the promoters from T3, T7 and sp6 in fact. So now here we have a PSP 64 and 65. Now in this PSP 64 and 65, what we have is that a typical PBR 322 plasmid with an origin of replication, and then we have an ampicillin resistant gene. Then we have a polyclonal site. So now in the polyclonal site, strategically next to that polyclonal site, we have introduced an sp6 promoter. So now here what happens is that we have to introduce the gene of our choice for expression in this region and make sure that this one is going to be operated in this way. Okay, now this is an expression vector with sp6 promoter in it. So now here what happens, since we have placed sp6 here, and we also discussed that suppose if you try to introduce the gene here, it can be either a positive orientation or a negative orientation. So you have to characterize that only with positive orientation it can work from this sp6 one. If it is a negative orientation, again the expression is going to be totally wrong. All right. So now, but this is compared to all these things, this is a very good vector in which there is a well-defined sp6 promoter here. So now this is the PSP 65. Again, it is the positive orientation and the negative orientation of the polyclonal restriction site. Now compared to this, we again have a very versatile plasmid. We call them as the plasmid GEM series 34Z, and then we have the F1. All right. Now compared to this, so now this is a much more modified version. For example, we have a polyclonal site here. So now then they have introduced T7 promoter in this direction, and on the other side of the polyclonal site, they have also introduced one more promoter, sp6, on this particular site. Now the advantage over this is that, for example, we are going to do a cloning of our gene into this one. I told you. So here in this case, we have to identify whether it is positive orientation or a negative orientation. That is very important. Only positive oriented one can be expressed using sp6 promoter in this one. But here what happens is that all we need to do is clone our gene into this polyclonal site. But you have to remember that whether it is positive orientation or a negative orientation. If it is a positive orientation, you express using T7 promoter. If it is a negative orientation, you can use sp6 promoter. Now you see the advantage of these promoters and how strategically they have placed here. So here it can only express if it is positive orientation, because the promoters in the other region is not there. Whereas here, so we do have a very good advantage of that one. So now PGEM34 series will have the ampicillin resistant gene, origin of replication for the double-stranded DNA replication. Then we have a polyclonal site. Then on one side we have a T7 promoter, on the other side we have an sp6 promoter. So the moment we insert the gene into the polyclonal site, so then we have to know the positive orientation and a negative orientation. Doesn't really matter whether it is positive or a negative orientation. We can express. Only thing is, if you know it is positive orientation, then we use T7 polymerase, or if it is in the negative orientation, we use sp6 polymerase in fact. So now that is the PGEM34 series. Now over that again what they have done is that they have also done PGEM3Z series. So here what happens, they have used the help of LAG-Z DNA. So now this is the polyclonal site sp6 T7, then we also have a LAG-Z DNA. If none of these things are working, then we can introduce the DNA of our choice under this LAG-Z DNA, and we can use the promoter. That promoter can be used by the induction in fact. So here we can activate using a specific polymerase enzyme. So all these promoters are under strict regulation. So PGEM3 series, we have the polyclonal T7 sp6. PGEM3Z series, we have, apart from this, we have the LAG-Z DNA. Then we also have an improved version PGEM3Z F1, because now here we have used a origin of replication from a filamentous bacteriophage M13. So here they have, apart from all those things, they are in the PGEM3Z series, they have also used origin of replication from another filamentous bacteriophage, that is the F1. So using this particular one, it is the same function. It can replicate the double-stranded DNA to copy only the single-strand DNA, so that can be used for the sequence purposes. Now that is how the sequence, that is the expression vectors from PBR322 to how they have developed from one vector to another vector, and this is a much more improvised vector in fact. I think I will stop at this time regarding the vector development. I will continue the further aspect in my next video. Thank you.